Yeah. Why this system absolutely sucks in Zenless Zone Zero. I'm just going to guess it's probably talking about the TV system, which I've got my issues with it as well. You see, from some of the comments on my videos, I'm definitely seeing that some people like the system, which it's totally subjective. I don't think it's a bad system. I just think it's applied to the game in a poor way, personally. I think it's a little bit too forced upon you. It looks like, from what people were saying before, it's been reduced in its scope and how much you have to deal with it. But I'd rather just see it as an optional system, you know, totally optional. It's kind of an event system, maybe tied to some, which it is, to some end game in a way, but being totally optional, and it's maybe just an extra way to get mats, which I suppose when it's mats, it's not optional because you need to grind for that stuff, but you can avoid it if you want to. I think obviously it works as a system to get you to between combat and get you to be between instances. And like I say, lore-wise, it does canonically make sense because you're sitting at a computer controlling your bang-boo, and it makes sense that that can be applied in that way because it's as if you're doing that part of it. But I just think it's a little bit too upfront. I'd like to see it reduced as we go further into the game. Personally, at the minute, I haven't grown to dislike the system yet, but I can see that I probably will if it's always there as we continue on through updates and story content, because it's definitely not the best system, that's for sure. It's not the most immersive, and well, it is intuitive because it's simple, but it's not very immersive. And I think with this game's combat, the way it works and the instances, it's not the most immersive in that sense anyway. There any gacha games really are, I suppose, but it just feels like, I think it exacerbates the negatives of the system, because really how little you're doing in the game, really, when you're actually in your instances and stuff. You know, you got your hub world, you got your instance battles, and then you got large chunks of this and kind of meandering content. So it would be nice to see it just become like 95% optional, and it just being here and there when, I guess maybe, well, it's not really needed. Let's get into the video anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this video today, I am going to explain to you precisely why the TV system is just an inherently...
I just knew... I think it's pretty obvious, but I just knew that's what he was going to be talking about.
...bad system in Zenless Zone Zero.
See, well, we'll wait for his points, and he might make valid points to change my mind. I don't think the system itself is inherently bad, though, because I do think if it was just an event or almost like a puzzle extra kind of system, I don't think it's bad. Like, mechanically, it's not annoying to actually do. It's just annoying the way it's implemented.
And before I go into the why, I want you to understand, I actually don't think the TV system is horrible. I think it has the wrong role in this game.
Okay, I think we agree. I think he's probably going to, hopefully, say what I'm thinking. Well, doesn't matter if he doesn't, but I've got a feeling that's what he's going to say, because I think the same. I think when you look at it from an objective standpoint, it's not a badly made system. I've seen some people hating on it, but I just don't agree in that sense. It's just how it's applied.
It has a role that simply is just probably the worst role to hand that kind of system. Storytelling inside of video games is actually quite methodical, and it has to be handled with care and a meticulous nature. When you tell a story inside of a video game, what makes a video game is playing the story. When we look at...
Well, it's a gameplay loop, isn't it, at the end of the day? Too many people forget that in video games and get carried away by... This is what I've always said, visuals to me don't really matter. I prefer art styles over visuals, but even then, art styles don't really matter if the game's core gameplay loop is bad or boring or just unintuitive and doesn't grasp you. The rest of it really doesn't matter.
Zenless Zone Zero, they've come up with a number of ways to tell a story, and they all go down to one goal in mind: to keep you engaged and connected to the story, to retain your attention as much and as long as possible. In ZZZ, they developed a brilliant way of telling a story that is not only innovative and disruptive to the genre, it's also original. That is the comic book style of telling the story.
it's not the only gacha game that does that. Solo Leveling Arise does a similar system. It's got a comic book style to it. Probably implemented a little bit less, but it's there. I suppose you could even argue that Snowbreak doesn't really have it, really. It's just got the characters talking on screen, so granted. But Solo Leveling does it.
I love this comic book style of telling a story. It's top-notch quality. The way they've produced the scenes is absolute gorgeous.
Yeah, big agree.
And I'm able to, you know, look forward to it each and every time it pops.
Agree. A lot of people hate on comic book slide cutscenes. I love them, man. I love them.
Up on the screen, but that's not the only variable. They also have their traditional way of telling a story, which is the static background, 2 characters or 3 characters going back and forth, yapping amongst one another. HoYoverse loves telling a story like that, and they've even like kind of pioneered a way for other games to do it. Wuthering Waves now does it as well. It's kind of cringe, but it's trendy, and it worked. Then they have cutscenes.
To be fair though, HoYoverse didn't invent that system at all. That's been around for a long time. It's been in JRPGs for years and other games. So they've just implemented it into the gacha system, basically. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these games are RPGs. They've just got a system of gambling added to them, really. They're just, a lot of the time, they're simplified RPGs, aren't they? But yeah, I don't agree with that. It's definitely not a HoYo innovation.
That's another variable into the puzzle known as storytelling in HoYoverse. And then there's one variable they added in that just, it didn't hit. They took a risk with it and it didn't hit. And that is the TV system. Yeah. Whether you know this or not,
it's a bad vehicle for storytelling.
With the static background or the comic book way of the storytelling in ZZZ, the continuation of the story.
I think the thinking was to stop it sitting for so much of that static background watching in terms of the time. That system was implemented to allow the vehicle of the story to be told in that way, that you're interacting with it, but also to remove exploration in between combat or instances, should I say, because that would take a lot of level building, which it's a smaller team working on this game, and I guess maybe that just wasn't there. But it's definitely been an artistic choice as well, and I agree. I don't think it's a good system for that personally. But yeah, going back to the panel system, that definitely wasn't a HoYo thing.
Is playing the story. And playing the story in ZZZ is very much, whether you know it or not, the TV system.
Yeah.
During the Nikomata arc, where you're trying to transport all those civilians out of that one little stationary area where Vision is basically trying to commit genocide on them because they don't want to pay the money to deal with the cost of living of a whole entire civilization of people. I don't want to go into the details on that, but just know during that arc, you're trying to save those civilians and prevent them from being killed by Vision. You have to put them on trains as a mission to get them out of that zone. You have to do certain things to get them out of that zone. You do that part in the TV system. Yeah.
It's less about getting them on the trains and more about getting to the places with the trains and the explosives and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it does. It really removes immersion of the story because you're not concentrating, but you're going through something that's really filler. And it's even got the system where you can speed up the voice acting, can't you? And I know you can skip a lot of stuff in a lot of these games anyway, but you can't with this. So even if you want to skip, because a lot of people do skip the story in gacha games. I know people seem to think that the storytelling is super important in these games, but I think a large portion of people fly through cutscenes, skip as much as they potentially can. But I don't. I like to see what's going on. And I do. I think it's a poor way of telling the story. The system is just pushed on you too much in general. Even if it wasn't a vehicle for the story, it's just, it should be something that's totally optional, man.
Yeah. And whether HoYoverse thought that was going to keep you engaged or not, I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, 95% of the people that play this game and did not look at it as an engagement of the story. They looked at it as, how the hell do I get out of this system so I can continue playing the game and continue the story? Yeah. So
I haven't found myself so much in that position yet, but I know that I'm going to. Do you know what I'm saying? I've not really found it frustrating, but I get it. And I can understand that some people probably would have right away. But I can see if it's going to be that mechanic for a long time, and it is going to be a vehicle for the story. And if it is, it's going to be hard to reduce it to the levels I want to see it reduced to. I can see it becoming frustrating. I can.
It completely disconnects you from the story. It distracts you, and it disrupts the engagement of the story. And I thought about this, and I came to this epiphany by going to the video archive inside of the game. We'll get to that in a bit. But when
I think that's why that's there, because I was quite surprised actually when you were watching the cutscenes. You can actually play them back as you're watching them, can't you? And then obviously you got the video archive, which I was surprised by that. I was like, actually, it kind of makes sense now, because when you're in the TV system, you're not going to be giving a damn, and it will kind of make people want to rush through cutscenes as well, because they've just had this system that they're not a fan of, going into more talking to maybe fight for 30 seconds, and then to go through it all over again.
When I got out of doing the TV system, I didn't get out of it like, oh, I'm retaining that. I was saving citizens and putting them on trains. I got out of it, and then it put me into another cutscene, and I was like, well, what the hell's going on here? When did we get here, and what the fuck just happened? All I heard was a bunch of yapping. You know what I mean? I was completely disconnected. And it was thanks to the TV system's role in this game, which, as I said, it's inherently a bad role for that TV system. It's not designed to be a part of storytelling, and it shouldn't be. It should be a part of a roguelike mode where you're getting buffs and going into instants and fighting enemies and stuff. I think if you change that role from that to storytelling, it would be a much more accepted system. And I'll give you some clear-cut examples that you pretty much cannot deny. When you're telling a story inside of God of War, as I told y'all before, what makes a video game a game is by playing the game. The player is playing the game. If you take out the play part of a game, it's no different from watching a television show. It's no different from watching a visual novel. When you're playing God of War story, after they have their methodical procedure of telling the story, which is by like listening to it as you're walking into the open world exploration, same thing with Final Fantasy VII, now you have to play the story. And I just realized this is such a significant variable that has to be handled with care, because the goal is to keep you engaged and keep you retaining what's going on. So in God of War, when you're fighting,
it is really an art to tell a story within a video game, isn't it? To keep you, as you said, engaged, to build it in a way that you've got enough content and gameplay for it to be immersive, it to be enjoyable, to want you to continue to play, and then hit it at the right beats with the story coming in and coming out, and even telling the story as you play, but done in the right way. I do agree that it does a bad, it implements it really badly, like I say, because not only do you get a bit disjointed when you come into the cutscenes, it kind of makes you want to press through those cutscenes, because you've kind of done this mode that's not really keeping you interested, but at the same time is distracting you from the story. So it kind of pushes into the next part of the storytelling, and you kind of want to get out of it, and then you go into a very small snippet of gameplay, and then you're back into that system again, and then you're back to the hub world, and then you're back into that, and it kind of really makes it feel like you're not playing the game for the most part. It amplifies the small combat instances, but I think if that was pulled away, was implemented through the story, but in different ways, but mainly became an optional thing, I don't think so many people would be having such a negative time with the game. Minus the combat situation, I think a lot of people was coming in expecting the combat to be something more than what it was, me included. And I think that's just because the combat looks ultra good visually, but doesn't have the impact, does it?
And enemies and stuff, that's a way to disconnect you from the story. But to keep you secure, they have to throw some dialogues in there and some cutscenes here and there, or it's like not necessarily a visual god tier graphical cutscene, but something is occurring as you're playing the game to keep you mindful of, hey, we're still playing a story, right? That doesn't exist in Zenless Zone Zero. When you go inside of these instant-based maps, there is absolutely zero immersion of a story. You're just beating up bad guys, kicking butt.
It's just like Snowbreak in that sense for me. It really feels like that, where that it doesn't feel like that's part of the actual story that's going on. It feels like it's just a mechanic, a gameplay loop, which obviously that's why we play games, but it feels separated and disjointed from what's actually going on in the world. It feels like it's totally separate. Like it's almost running parallel to what's actually happening rather than being intertwined with it.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Canvas Monsters followed your channel.
Thanks for the follow, dude.
And then boom, nothing happens. That's a disconnect from the story. On top of the TV system, I look at the TV system in a way. I don't think they were trying to be lazy, but it is a lazy way of telling the continuation of a story. I would have much rather seen some type of visualization of saving people and putting them on trains inside of the
it definitely would impact it a little bit more. Definitely, I agree there.
Instant-based maps, as opposed to doing that all inside of a TV system. Anyways, hopefully that makes perfect sense, but now I want to show you how I even got to this answer. It was the video archive. The freaking video.
See, for me, I didn't even need to go into the video archive to come to that conclusion. I just, it's straight away, it hit me as like, this is not a great vehicle for the story, and it's not a great system to make mandatory either. I think it should be something that's totally optional and applied at the right points in the game to add a little bit of, and just a different gameplay mechanic, basically.
Video archive has every single scene that you've went through in the game all contained in that one spot. The comic book story scenes, the static background story scenes, cut scenes. I'm talking about Miyabi when she dashed and darted around the map like Zenitsu Agatsuma. We know where y'all got that inspiration from. That was literally all Zenitsu Agatsuma right there. Anyways, all of that shit is in the video archive. You can watch it as many times as you want. Most importantly, you can watch all the dialogues without any distractions, any disruptions. You don't have to go through a TV system. You don't have to like play a game. You can just watch it all back to back to back. And when I was doing it, I went to the Nikamata section because I was like, let me see if I can figure out why I don't like this story. Why is it dog shit? Why did I feel like every single piece of dialogue was just bickering, yapping, shooting the shit, and I didn't know the point of it? It was because of I was not able to stay immersed into the story.
It's not even just you staying, you're not processing it because you're doing something else at the same time that doesn't kind of, how do I describe it? It's not contextually applicable to what's actually going on because it's quite abstract because you're in this TV system wherein games can tell a story as you're doing stuff. So you're actually doing video, but usually what they do is you'll go from active combat usually into a little traversal point that's quite simplified, but the characters will be talking and you're like, oh, okay, it's time to process what they're talking about as we move into this next area and this next area of action where it makes sense to what's going on, where you're in this real abstract game mechanic as they're trying to give you a story that just, it doesn't make you process it really.
Due to all the things that were occurring in between. And when I watched it back in the video archive without disruptions and distractions, I was like, wait, hold on. Why the hell am I actually keeping up with?
And I got to say as well, I'm not disliking the story in this game, but I think I'm quite easy to please in that sense. I enjoyed 1.0 with Wuthering Waves. I like the start. I like the end. The middle section of 1.0 was pretty rough. 1.1 was great, but a lot of people really didn't like 1.0 until the Threnodian. I kind of liked the start a little bit, I did. I think I have a little bit more patience with stories. Not so much gameplay loops, but I can give stories a little bit of time to get going. Because I played a lot of JRPGs when I was younger, and they typically simmer for quite a while before they get going.
With this, why am I enjoying it? Why is it not as annoying or as like pointless as I thought it was prior to doing this? Oh, I don't have to do a TV system. Oh, I'm not playing the game, like doing all these other things that disconnect me from what's actually occurring. And that is when I had the epiphany that is the reason why it's bad. The TV system is bad. So if you can make the excuse, by the way, because yes, I did do it live on stream. You can make the excuse that, oh, well, Smack, you got disconnected because you're too busy talking to chat. Well, I talked to.
That's true, though. I'm not going to deny when you are streaming, personally for me anyway, I do find it a little bit harder to engage with stories than if I'm just sitting on my own, absorbing it all. I definitely think that's a thing.
Chat during the Honkai Star Rail story, and we had a great fucking time about the story. We were talking about many different concepts and plots during the story, got into many different debates and arguments, which proves that it's not chat or me being live that disconnects me from the story. It's however the hell they're choosing to tell the story. You get what I mean?
Process all those things at once.
It's problematic, the TV system. You have to find another way to keep us engaged in your story by playing the game. If the TV system is the only means of us playing the game while telling the story, I just don't think it's going to work out too well for you guys. I think you need to pivot and you need to do an instance-based map that doesn't just consist of beating up bad guys, but
basically what I was saying there needs to be some sort of transition between one combat area to another combat area where you're kind of just going from place to place. There's a little bit of something to do, but it allows you to listen to the characters talk while you're keeping yourself immersed in the universe without it being so abstract and almost... Puzzle is a strong term to give it because it's not really a puzzle. It really is just moving from point A to point B that's quite simplified to do, but it's enough to distract you in this abstract format that kind of pulls you out of what's going on. So when the characters are talking, you're not really listening because your brain automatically switches into, I'm not being told a story here. So I think that's what needs to happen. But I think the system should become a total optional thing, in my opinion. Maybe just have it here and there, dotted within some kind of, just to become a subsystem within the maps, maybe, even. Or just in the hub world, potentially.
But you also have these short little scenes of the objective in mind of the storytelling that are occurring to keep people retained. Before I end this video off, I do want to go and show you guys off the video archive so that you can see for yourself how cool this is. I think it's really cool. And like I said, I dare say it is the biggest reason why the file size of Zenless Zone Zero is so monumental. It's because they added this amazing quality of life perk into the game. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so once you get back to your little home base, you come over here and here's the video archive. They have Phaethon's story, which is the MSQ, right? And then they have agent stories, which I imagine this is going to be, because we're about to do, what is her name? Soldier number 11. We're about to do her main story quest. Every time you do a main story quest for any characters that are coming out in the future, this is going to be where you can go back and look at the stories. But if we go to Phaethon's story,
it'll almost act as like webisodes for each character, won't it, in a way?
This is the MSQ. Every single chapter we've done is contained over here with this beautiful ass retro aesthetic. And what's crazy about it is every comic book scene, every static scene, and every cut scene that has occurred, it is in this video archive for you to go back and watch without any distractions and any.
See, it shows that they understand that the TV system is a distraction from the story, but they also understand how important the story is to add this. So it's like, it's such a weird way to tell the story. But in my opinion, though, I do think that HoYo had an issue with this in Genshin. I hated Paimon being the vehicle for the character. That's one thing that Honkai did a lot better, is that you had your whole team around you that kind of conversed if the main character didn't speak as much, which is a much better way to do it. And this is a much better way to do it. Well, each character's voiced a lot more anyway, but your brother and sister can kind of act as that sort of character to question you and push you to decisions that you need to come to, where Paimon was just a really annoying way for the main character to almost be voiced and to almost be like the moral compass for the main character. So it's not like they don't have previous with that, in my opinion, but it's just, I agree with that. It is a massive distraction from the storytelling.
These disruptions. So again, I can click on the very beginning of the scene. Let's click next. It'll show everything. Then we can skip.
Dude, the cutscenes, the actual animated cutscenes are animated so gorgeously, aren't they? The characters like are so fluid and I don't know what's the word I'm looking to describe it, but they're just, it's so good.
Right? Now it starts the comics.
These are dangerous.
And you can look at every single thing that's occurred, right? Skip. Whatever part of the story that you feel you weren't able to digest, you can go back and watch it and then move on. I was able to come over here to the Nikomata story. And dude, watching this back without any disruptions, I cannot stress to you, way better, because I wasn't like so freaking, my mind wasn't overstimulated with like doing TV systems or, you know, fighting enemies. There was just too much of a disconnection in between for me to retain.
It's that disconnect, that distraction, but it's the abstract application of it as well. You kind of go on autopilot, so you switch off to those other things because you're on autopilot, I think. And it's got no context to how, well, it has, but it's in an abstract form, isn't it? Like how I said, when most story games, you know, Last of Us, insert story game here, you typically have this lull in action, but you're moving from point A to B, where the characters are adding context, are adding lore, are deciding where to go, conversing about something that's happened, you know, even having moral quandaries, all that sort of stuff. And it adds to what's happening, what you're doing, and it's all contextually applied. So it makes sense and you engage with it as well.
What was going on. And yes, again, me being live played a bit of a role in it to it as well, but that was not the main problem, as I already explained to you guys before. Problem was that damn TV system. So I implore you guys to come to this video archive and see if maybe you have a different perspective on the story as I did. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I have no idea. I can only share my own personal experience. But one thing that's for certain, it's certainly worth coming here and scrolling down to close quarters combat and getting another gander at this beautiful cutscene right here. I'm not going to show it in case anybody else hasn't got to that portion yet, but just know it's there for you to watch as many times as you want to watch it. If you're a weeb like me, who completely loves weeb type of flashy cutscenes and edgy cutscenes like that, yeah, just go to close quarters combat and you can enjoy it.
I don't think I've got to that yet. So
another thing I want to mention about this video archive is it actually teases at things you haven't done yet. With the front page cover, I've come to realize all of the front page covers are going to tell you, much like a light novel. Actually,
dude, the artists in this game need a round of applause. Like, they really do. Like, they've absolutely outdone themselves, HoYo have, in regards to the art side of things, because it's just gorgeous.
They're going to tell you that whoever's on that front page cover, it's going to be about that character, right? So I haven't done this one yet, but I already know it's going to give some more depth to the bond between the two brother and sister, as well as how they got to the roles they got to, so on and so forth. So you can look at the front page cover and see some things. Big Ben, probably going to learn about him. Bro looks country as hell. And then the Bellabog industry people, Grace and Kaleda, right? You can get a little sneak peek, and it goes all the way up to this page. And then after that, it starts back over.
I genuinely feel as well, because I know there was that talk about the Genshin anime happening. I feel like this game lends itself way better to being converted into an anime series than any of the previous HoYo games, in my opinion.
So, holy spoilers, right? Not spoiler, more like a teaser. Here's Zuyan's chapter right here. We're eventually going to get to learning about Zuyan. She kind of looks like that agent that was the antagonist a little bit. That'd be crazy if it actually ends up being Zuyan, because that agent was looking kind of fine.
I said the same
Let
thing.
me know your thoughts.
I said when she was doing that evil shit, I was like, damn, she's fine. I can fix her. It's okay. We'll work it out.
Down below, this is going to wrap up my video. I hope I provided some good substance and context as to why you may or may not be enjoying the story as much as you could be. I genuinely think it is a TV system issue. It's in the wrong role. It needs to be more of a roguelike mode. It doesn't need to be a piece of storytelling. I think it's just, it doesn't transfer well into the storytelling atmosphere. Just check that out. You can keep it in the game, put it somewhere else. Like I said, I think it's more appropriate for roguelike purposes than storytelling. It's just, I think it's bad. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up. Peace, love, and happiness. I'll catch you guys on the flip.
Great video. Made some excellent points. Gacha's Mac, check him out. Well, this system absolutely sucks in Zenless Zone Zero. I agree. I agree with pretty much everything he said there. Apart from the scenes with the characters talking, that's definitely not a HoYo thing. I came long before that, but that's a small point. But I agree. I've said it multiple times that I don't hate the system. I think it's just applied badly. It is a distraction. It shouldn't be a part of the main game. It should be this separate optional event. A roguelike system would be cool if it was applied in that sort of sense. With, you know, maybe being for mats or something else, or just to add lore. You know, maybe if you wanted to explore a little bit of extra lore of the universe of Zenless Zone Zero. But I do agree, it shouldn't be a vehicle for the story, and it shouldn't be separating cutscenes and gameplay so much, because it just exacerbates, at the moment, the small sections of gameplay you get at the start. It makes them seem even smaller. And I think that's what's stopping a lot of people from getting into the game at the start. It's not just the story, but getting into the game. Because I've seen a lot of people have come into my chat, played comments, played the game for an hour, uninstalled it. And I don't think that's just down to them expecting more from the actual combat. I think it's just that it's exacerbating all the problems that are there potentially with the combat at the moment, because everything's just smaller and there's such large gaps in between the good part of the game, which the combat is fun. It's just very simple. And I think because you're hitting it in small beats here and there, it makes it seem even more simple as well, to be fair. It definitely is too easy, though, at the start of the game. I know people say it gets a little bit more difficult, but I do think the game needs some sort of extra difficulty level, in my opinion, that's mainly designed at people on console and PC, because I get it for mobile. But anyway, yeah, that's the end of it. Gacha Smack, why the system absolutely sucks in Zenless Zone Zero. Definitely check him out. Show some love. Good video, man. Enjoyed that one.